Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.
Hello and welcome to the second episode of GE and CNBC TV 18 present Energizing India 2.0 Conversations on Oil and Gas. In this episode, we aim to hear thought-provoking sessions and get a detailed perspective on the oil and gas sector from industry stalwarts and government representatives. To deliberate, we have a very special session, Digitizing Oil and Gas Industry. Moderating and taking the discussion forward would be Sumiit Lakhutia of CNBC TV 18. But before that, let's take a look at the short audiovisual on the current energy scenario of the country.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. So without further ado, let's start with this panel. I'd like to invite up on stage my panelists. We have Mr. UP Singh, Additional Secretary, Exploration Division with the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. Mr. Ajay Kumar Dwivedi, the Director, Exploration at ONGC. Mr. Saurabh Kamdar, Director, Energy and Natural Resources, CRISIL. And finally, Ashish Bhandari, CEO, Oil and Gas, GE South Asia. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. When we talk about technology and you talk about oil and gas, generally you think, how is oil and gas going to be using technology in this way to make themselves more efficient?
I think we are at a juncture in the evolution of the entire oil and gas segment where, particularly for India, deployment of the right technology, the right means has been an important phase currently. Technology could be looked at in two parts. One could be in terms of the exploration, the production-linked technologies, or the second part is on the digitization or the initiatives around the information technology or big data. I think in both of these segments there are huge amount of opportunities. The world is evolving. When I look at either of the segments in terms of, say, the technology linked to exploration and production, immense amount of global efforts. When we look at some of the case studies in, say, UK or in Malaysia, I think number of technologies from enhanced oil recovery to improve the production has been deployed, and I think they are very contextual, very relevant in the context at which we stand in India. Likewise, on the digitization part, I think when we look at digital rock technologies or a lot of technologies on terms of the initiatives around big data or IoT, I think there's a plethora of things both which can help us assess resources, optimize the exploration and production cycle, and also plan in terms of the predictive cycle of the entire value chain. So I think in all of these segments currently the technology dialogue becomes very relevant.
And I'll just bring in Ashish. So what's your view on this? How is GE using, putting in place innovations to kind of help oil and gas companies make the most of this technology to improve their processes?
I've seen that every time the oil and gas industry has gone through a challenge, it has found a way to revolutionize itself. In this particular case, there are a lot of things around cost cuttings that you can do, but one of the biggest ones is around using big data to help each one of our processes, plants, etc., become significantly more efficient. And we are finding that in a variety of different ways. For example, on our turbomachinery side, we are using big data to improve the efficiency and the performance of our engines by a significant portion. We are using big data in the life of field support for deep water projects to improve how the projects perform and reduce cost from an interface management point of view, life of field perspective, by good 15 to 20%. And then finally, we are using big data in our factories itself from creating brilliant factories that help make products come out faster and cheaper than ever before.
Mr. Singh, I want to get your point of view more on a policy front at the moment. So we have the role of the hydrocarbon exploration and licensing policy held. But there is a big push to kind of increase domestic production. So what's the way ahead on that?
Now there are two ways. One is the policy and the other is implementation of the policy actually. I remember when I joined in this oil and gas industry, sometimes in the beginning of October 2014, the first week of October 2014, I was immediately tasked with provide a cabinet decision relating to gas pricing. Because
Right.
gas pricing was something which was a lot of uncertainty about it. That was on the a burning topic of the day. We did bring out a policy in October 2014 itself. That time policy looked pretty good. Most of the people were satisfied. A few people were not satisfied also.
Yeah.
But we did come out with the policy then only. In fact, we provided then in the policy that we would be providing a premium for the oil and gas which will be produced from a deep, ultra deep and HPHT areas,
Right.
which we call a difficult areas actually. And later on we found out that instead of providing let's say a premium in terms of certain percentage over the gas price fixed or certain percentage to be sold in the open market, we did go much ahead actually. And as you are aware, very recently we have said that there would be basically a complete freedom as far as the marketing and pricing of the gas from these fields should be concerned. So that was one. Then of course there have been a number of reforms, but couple of them I would like to very quickly say.
Yes.
That's in upstream sector actually.
Yeah.
You know, the one big reform is basically what we call now a hydrocarbon exploration licensing policy, a successor to NELP, what we call
Right.
HELP actually. So the first feature of this policy basically has been that one license would be enough for exploitation of any kind of hydrocarbons actually. The other one of course is something on open acreage licensing policy. Instead of like last round of NELP we had was in 2010 actually.
Right.
So now we would like to make it a continuous process actually rather than, and not only continuous process, the choice would be with the prospective bidder to carve out a block actually. Of course, one of the perhaps things needed was basically having a data. So we are about to almost complete as far as the NDR is concerned. And the third very important feature in that is also shift from a production sharing contract to revenue sharing contract actually. So we wanted
Right.
to have a policy which is easier to kind of administer, less kind of a micromanagement, and the fourth thing in that policy is basically we are giving a complete freedom as far as the gas pricing and allocation is concerned.
Mr. Dwivedi, talking about, I want to come back to you to talk about technology. Your thought on the way ahead for technology in the oil and gas sector and what's happening at ONGC, if you would want to share some things with us on that.
So as far as technology induction is concerned, this is right from exploration to production, I mean for the entire value chain if you see. How it works. As you go for the new deeper plays exploration, in Indian context if you see, then it is HPHT. That is going to be, next big size resource available. There you require number of technologies.
Right.
Right from drilling, the well completion, the testing, all those things. Hydrofracturing is one area which is very, very critical in this kind of reservoirs exploitation. So we have been definitely trying to do this in our several sectors. But at the same time, it's more related with innovation. I mean, the technology, when we say that we have to enhance the spectrum of energy resources in the country because of the need, because of the demand, then you have to think also the spectrum of technologies which will be required. So all these things need to be seen together. I mean, if you, I always propose a value circle concept in which you don't lose the sight of the end while you are at the initial stage.
Okay.
So that's very important, and that goes very well for the technologies as well.
Ashish, final words.
Thank you very much for giving me the last word. I would say we would be, and I would be, as an Indian, be very bullish on the Indian oil and gas industry. And before I even talk about upstream, let me talk about downstream and petrochemical, etc. For the first time, after almost a couple of decades, we are now at a place where we are putting up 3 new fertilizer plants with more under discussion. The significant investment going on for the upgrade from Bharat 4 to Bharat 6 fuels. There's talk of 2 new refineries. The Jagdishpur-Haldia pipeline is finally seeing the light of day. And then you come to the upstream side where some of these decisions will result in possibly some of the biggest projects globally happening in India. So I would say it is as bullish a time as I remember. And if the oil prices improve a little bit more and we see Cain and Reliance again coming into play, this could be the golden age for oil and gas in India.
All right, so fingers crossed for that. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Singh. Thank you, Mr. Dwivedi. Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would now like to bring together the decision makers with the executors to decode the energy requirements with an objective of charting out an action agenda and roadmap for the future. Moderating and taking the discussion forward would be Nayanthara Rai of CNBC TV18, and the theme of this discussion is how to enhance Indian capabilities in oil and gas space. Over to you, Nayanthara.
Good evening. Let's get this next panel going. I want to invite all the panelists on stage. So can we have please Mr. Sanjeev Singh, the Director of Refineries from IOC, on stage. Also on my panel is Gauri Johar. She's going to be representing the international community. She's Director of Consulting and Research at IHS. Dr. R.K. Malhotra, the Director General of the Petroleum Federation of India. And Deepak Mahurkar, the Leader of Oil and Gas from PwC India. I'm going to start with you, sir. We heard Dharmendra Pradhan, the Minister, say that this is going to be the year of the consumer. It's going to be about affordable energy. Does that mean that companies like IOC, for example, may not be able to increase petrol and diesel prices by as much as they may want to? Do you fear there could be such a directive that may come in the way?
As we all know that the diesel prices were deregulated. MS or the petrol was already deregulated. Presently, we all know that the prices are fluctuating along with the global prices. So, when the crude prices are going up, I think we should expect the prices also to go up. But in line with the government policies, the product prices are governed. Presently, these prices are not carrying the amount of under recovery they used to carry earlier. So let's see, I think they will be very much aligned with the global prices, and until unless we see a very high jump in the crude prices, I'm sure that they will be aligned and they will be affordable also.
Gauri, I'm going to come to you now. In this era of volatile crude prices, how has the international community viewed India?
I think some of the policy changes that have come about, especially on gas pricing, in a time when globally capex is being cut, IHS predicts that about in the period 2015 to 2020, there's going to be a $2 trillion cut in capex globally. And given that global scenario, we are actually seeing projects going forward in India. So as soon as the gas pricing policy change happened, ONGC gave a green light to the $5 billion investment in the KG basin. Similarly, we may see some more investments coming through neighboring blocks, which are BP Reliance blocks and the GSPC blocks. So it's interesting that, at a time when there are spending cuts happening in the upstream globally, we are seeing spending increases in the domestic upstream in India.
Dr. Malhotra, let me bring you into this conversation. Whether it is Dharmendra Pradhan, the Petroleum Minister, or Piyush Goyal, the Power Minister, that talk about the need to switch our power plants to natural gas. The big question is, where's the gas and when is it going to come? You might see all of these policy reforms, but when are we going to see the gas?
Actually, madam, if you see the policy reforms which have been initiated by the Government of India recently, there has been a lot of focus on exploration of new areas. I think gas, whether from deep water or from ultra deep water, people have been waiting for these kind of policy initiatives from the government side. And then there is tremendous opportunity of bringing LNG at this current prices of gas globally. I think there's time that we need to tie up for long-term contracts also at this low prices. If we could tie up for LNG sourcing, but then we will have to build up the infrastructure. We will have to build up the gas grid, as Minister also said that we need to build up all that gas grid in the country. Then we need to have the infrastructure in place. And some of the policies which will be required would be the fiscal incentives for doing all that, and tax concessions, etc., for building up the infrastructure. I think that is key to it. And then demand is already there. There is the CGD, smart cities, people have been talking about whether we should have built up all on natural gas. Minister talked about 100 more gas stations in the city of Delhi. Delhi is not alone where the CNG demand is bound to come up. Because if you see the list of polluted cities, India has many more polluted cities, and I think the tremendous opportunity for CNG and piped natural gas. We are importing large quantities of LPG at this point of time. If we can, and we have ambitions to reach out. The government's announcement on Ujjwala scheme, where they want to reach out to 5 crore more people in next few years. I think there is tremendous potential for gas. Demand is there, demand side. So we need to focus on the domestic production. I think there is an opportunity. Let's wait. I hope, as an optimist,
So
I hope that there will be gas available.
Okay, so while we wait for that, Deepak, trying to become a gas-based economy much later than most other countries. For example, you've heard, we are behind the bus, right, when it comes to that?
We are very late.
Do you think we now need to start focusing on renewables before we miss that bus?
No, renewables focus is coming in, and for sure the hydrocarbon people on this particular panel wouldn't be able to so resoundingly say as to whether renewables are first or hydrocarbon. But that agenda, in my opinion, including as the Minister said, is on track. India is currently being acclaimed in many senses with respect to achievements on renewables. But the support that hydrocarbon sector can give for serving the renewable agenda is at best give the best fuel that is possible, and that's gas.
How can you do it, sir? How can you support the renewable energy sector?
Actually, apart from renewable, let me add one more game changer, possible game changer, that might be the biofuels. So I think if we see the total energy which we are going to see for the coming decades, probably biofuels and renewables might be the game changer.
The Minister also made it quite clear, no question, by 2020 we're going to have Euro 6.
Yes.
You're in charge of the refineries at IOC, sir. By 2020 you're set?
Let me clarify one thing. I mean, before I talk about our plans for Euro 6 or BS6, number one, BS6 fuels are going to benefit BS6 engines. I mean, this concept that BS6 fuel is going to reduce emission from all the vehicles is not true. Secondly, total benefit out of Euro 6 fuel or BS6 fuel, we have to have BS6 engines, number one. Number two, BS6 emissions are achieved in the standard lab conditions. So if those conditions are not actually happening on the road, then again the emission even from BS6 engines may also be even more. Just let me...
Maybe more, you say it could be more polluting.
Just let me clarify. Not from the present level, but from the guaranteed levels. Like if the vehicles are overloaded, if they are running at a slower speed than the test cycles, then the emission from the BS6 engines may also be more than the guaranteed numbers. So BS6 definitely is the right step in the right direction, but this may not be the absolute answer for all our issues. Now coming to the readiness of the refineries, all the refineries we have already made plans, and presently, I mean, there even for BS4 also, the whole BS4 switching the whole country towards BS4 was a 3 years program. We have already completed 2 years, and more than 50% of the consumption is already at BS4 level. Another 1 year, the whole country moves to BS4, and after that, by 2020, the whole country moves to BS6. It's a very, very tough task. All the refineries are working towards that. And we are absolutely, in fact, our internal target is to supply BS4 is by September 19.
So while we still figure out whether the odd-even scheme actually helped out pollution or not, here's IOC saying that maybe Euro 6 is not going to be that big a game changer for pollution. Deepak, I saw you were wanting to jump into this conversation.
Right. I think the question was apt in that sense in terms of whether it is a challenge for the industry. I think this is the right forum also to debate when equipment manufacturers and technology providers are equally available in this room. Companies like GE and equivalents have a major role to play in this changeover taking place in BS6 refineries. The largest task in the hands of these refineries is to make it happen by 2020, and I think the best of the brains will work on this to make it happen by 2020 as the promise which is given there. Whether the debate whether BS6 will work for pollution, obviously not. I think you attacked it head on, and I think everybody in this room will then start thinking, are we chasing the right target or not? But quickly dealing with a couple of other issues, as he rightly said, despite giving BS6, there are a few more things that we will have to do. One from the hydrocarbon sector is obviously to make ethanol happen. There are countries who have demonstrated there are substantial volume, much beyond even the 5% which is not getting achieved by India can be achieved. And that's an agenda which will have to be taken with a zeal to make renewables happen within the hydrocarbon sector.
Food for thought, something to discuss and talk about later on. That is Euro 6 really going to be a game changer? Is it going to bring down emissions? Is it going to bring down pollution levels? This panel certainly not convinced. Gentlemen, Gauri, we are out of time, so we have to wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us here. Thank you.
That's all on this special two-part series on Energizing India 2.0 from the entire team. Thanks for watching.
Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.